expand on that later on. But for the moment, okay, let's look at something from the Bulletin of the British. In fact, just came out just last month, okay, and I think that's not Jürgen Simon. I don't think he leads a double life as a bench scientist. I know he's a lawyer, but I don't think he's a bench scientist. Okay, also House is based in Holland. He's one of the active researchers, okay, who worked on the molecular biology of the SARS. Okay, so direct follow up with the last slide again. Just a couple of paragraphs, okay, which conveys the main points. Patent applications that incorporate the genomic sequence of SARS acute respiratory syndrome, SARS coronavirus, have been filed by a number of organizations I mentioned earlier in Asia, Europe, and North America in particular. Again, this is likely to result in a fragmentation of intellectual property rights, which will create a thicket, which in turn may adversely affect the development of products such as vaccines to combat SARS. Okay? Placing these patents into a patent pool, okay, to be licensed on a non-exclusive basis. Okay? In other words, basically dealing with it, okay, as generics, okay, non-exclusive basis, okay, may circumvent, okay, these difficulties and set a precedent for the use of this kind of mechanism in other areas of healthcare, leading to benefits in public health. Okay. All right, before I come to that, now in the case of SARS, okay, at least here was a situation in which there was interest, okay, including commercial interest, okay, in developing variety of commodifiable outputs, okay, which clearly there was a market for it. The economic impact, okay, if not the epidemiological impact, was dramatic, okay, in the case of SARS, okay, and this occurred in countries which were affluent or very rapidly developing, so there's clearly an economic incentive, okay, for diagnostics, for vaccines, for efficacious therapies, okay. Now there's even more serious problem, okay, even preceding the SARS, okay, and this is an issue that Médecins Sans Frontières has highlighted, okay, very well, so in the last 10 years, okay, and that's the issue of neglected disease, okay, where there's not even an incentive, okay, economic incentive, okay, to develop, okay, drugs, vaccines, okay, all kinds of commodities, okay, to address, okay, and that is taken from an article written by Rachel Cohen, okay, who's at the MSF office in New York, published in the Multinational Monitor, okay. And I think it's worth reading out the entire paragraph because it summarizes very well. The essential issue is with drug research and development for diseases that disproportionately affect poor people in developing countries is at a virtual standstill, and this was written in 2002. Okay? According to a Lancet article by Patrice Trouillet and colleagues, June 22, 2002, of the 1,393 new drugs approved between 1975 and 1999, that's in the last quarter of the 20th century, okay? Only 16, okay, or just 1%, okay, was specifically developed for tropical diseases and tuberculosis, diseases that account for 11.4% of the global disease burden. NSF, okay, which of course is the Nobel Prize winner in 1999, Peace Prize, has called attention to the problem of neglected diseases, seriously disabling or life-threatening diseases such as malaria, TB, sleeping sickness, Chagas disease, Kala-Azar, which mainly affect people in developing countries for which treatment options are inadequate or do not exist, and for which R&D is insufficient or non-existent. Okay. Those stricken with neglected disease do not constitute a valuable enough market to stimulate adequate R&D by multinational pharmaceutical industry. With a global system that relies on private companies to bring drugs to market, this situation has left much of the world without prospect for treatment and cure of the diseases that take a dreadful toll on the populations. Actually, the situation is even worse than that. We spoke of 16, okay? 16 out of 1,393. Here's something in the New York Times, okay, by article by Michael Crane and Rachel Glennis, who are economists at Harvard University, again. In an article entitled Creating a Market for Vaccines, okay, for 13 out of these 16 drugs which I mentioned, okay, 2 were modifications of existing medicines, okay. 2 were produced for the US military, and 5 came from veterinary research. Okay. Only 4 were developed by commercial pharmaceutical companies specifically for tropical diseases in humans. Okay. Yeah. Because of this situation, and by the way, this situation is not a dramatic new discovery. WHO has known about it for the last 3 decades at least. Okay. In fact, that was a reason for the TDI program, the Tropical Disease Research Program, to fund and encourage research in major tropical diseases, which pharmaceutical companies were not very keen on because there was no market for it. There was a need, but there was no demand. There's no economic demand. So a couple of years ago, MSF, together with a number of public medical research organizations, announced the formation of this initiative called the DNDI, the Drugs for Neglected Disease Initiative. The brainchild of MSF, DNDI aims to take the development of drugs for neglected diseases out of the marketplace and encourage the public sector to assume greater responsibility. It aspires to harness public and private sector resources with new science and technology to meet a needs-based research and development agenda for drugs for neglected disease. This is reflected in the Constitution of its founding partners. They currently include Nations Volunteer, WHO TDR, the Osvaldo Cruz Foundation in Brazil, Indian Council for Medical Research, Kenya Institute for Medical Research, Institute Pasteur France, and the Ministry of Health, Malaysia. And I was especially interested that in Malaysia it was not the Institute for Medical Research, but the Ministry of Health, Malaysia. So I actually call up I have occasionally tips with the Ministry of Health over other matters, but in this instance I called them to congratulate them and ask them for more information. But as usual, they were not very forthcoming with the information. I told them actually I was going to a conference and I wanted to bring up this point and anticipated questions again. So I wanted to be able to elaborate on the nature of the Malaysian government's involvement in this, but this still didn't persuade them. Now, the DNDI is a wonderful initiative, but that's harnessing public plus private sector resources, they hope, to do research on neglected diseases. Even when you come up with a promising candidate drugs or diagnostics or vaccines, there's still a question of upgrading it, upscaling it to commercial scale production and distribution. We're talking about a consortium of research institutions. They can't quite handle that. So there's still the issues, who is going to scale it up to industrial scale production and distribution and marketing. So, public patents. Now, Dennis Kucinich, of course, was an early candidate in the last presidential election, but the campaign didn't run very fast. Well, he's one of the lone voices in U.S. Congress, in a very valiant but I think relatively ineffectual effort, to try to take on big pharma in the United States, indeed internationally. So here's something from an article he wrote in The Nation in June 2003. He proposed to introduce legislation in U.S. Congress that would create a new network of government labs for the research, development, and manufacture of pharmaceutical products and biologics. When discoveries are made, the patents would be held by the government, and non-exclusive licenses would be attached to them. This will allow companies. Is that telling me I have 2 minutes or what? When discoveries are made, the patents would be held by the government and non-exclusive licenses attached to them to allow companies to compete to manufacture pharmaceutical products just like generic drug companies do now. It would radically bring down the cost of drugs and would also increase the affordability of cures worldwide. Okay, I won't read the rest of it, I'm running out of time. Now, in the last 2-3 years, I've also been participating in the European Commission. The European Commission has a number of funding programs for collaborative research. There's a program called INCOS, which funds science and technological research between EC Latin America, EC Africa, EC Asia, EC Southeastern Europe. And the last couple of rounds, I've been part of the Asia Review Panel, which reviews the grant applications. And during those sessions, as we review the proposals, one question cropped up repeatedly, and that was the question of that there was clearly potentially patentable findings that were coming out, that might come out of the research that was being proposed in the grant applications. So we asked the EC scientific officers chairing our sessions, does the EC have a policy on the disposal of intellectual property or potentially patentable findings that arise from internationally collaborative research publicly funded or EC funded? They said they weren't clear about it. During the second round of reviews, it became fairly clear that the EC's policy objectives will geared more towards the R&D needs of SMEs, small and medium enterprises, which lack the in-house R&D capacity of larger firms. SMEs, many of them innovative and dynamic, were viewed as the preferred vehicles for commercializing the outputs of EC-funded research in science, technology, and development. So the Asia panel got together and discussed it, and towards the end of the review process, we verbally suggested again to the scientific officer, her name was Anna Karauglu, that perhaps again one issue again, one option again that the EC could consider again would be that the fruits of such international collaborations perhaps be vested again in international agencies such as the World Health Organization again, to keep the prerogatives within the international public domain again. I think it would be rather, because the de facto situation at that time was that it was left up to the research consortium that was applying for the research grant to deal with the IPR matters and we felt that it might be somewhat sensitive for the EC itself to become the repository of IPR arising from international collaborative research, publicly funded. This is all right. I'll just skip this. Okay, now I'll switch on in the last 1.5 minutes. I will switch on to a slightly different type. Thus far I've been speaking more on patents, IPR, and access to essential medicines. Now, in the last of late, there's emerged a perspective within public health, in particular epidemiology or ecological research in which it might be good, which suggests that we should perhaps look at this issue of medicines and the contributions of biomedical science in the context of what might we call the social ecology of health and disease, just to get a to get a sense of perspective and proportion as to what medicine or modern biomedical science could contribute towards population health. So the SARS epidemic has also reminded us to retain a sense of proportion when considering disease etiology and society's coping responses. Notwithstanding the rapid success in isolating and sequencing the SARS coronavirus, the epidemic quickly subsided in the absence of reliable diagnostics, vaccines, or efficacious therapies. WHO gave much credit to institutional responses such as isolation, contact tracing, ring fencing, and quarantines, centuries-old techniques, with lesser mention of personal risk avoidance, etc. Most pertinently, the economic and financial stakes involved ensured that SARS would not be a neglected disease. Okay, this, I think we'll skip this. This was just to bring your attention to one of the milestones in the emergence of the social ecological perspectives. This is a very famous diagram taken from Thomas McEwen. In the 60s, he was a professor, medical historian at Birmingham University, and he quite convincingly demonstrated that in the historical decline of a major infectious killer in UK and Wales, that modern medical science in the form of chemotherapy or vaccines actually had very little to do with it. More than 85% of the historical decline in TB mortality between 1838 and the early 1950s had already occurred before the availability of chemotherapy in the form of the first effective antibiotic, streptomycin, and the BCG vaccination became widely available only in the 1950s. Finally, this couple of paragraphs taken from the award lecture of Richard Levins, who was honored with the Edinburgh Medal of Science in 1996. I consider this to be one of the very expressive declarations of this perspective on social ecology of health and disease. So I'll just read out. In 1970s, the doctrine of epidemiological transition proposed that the economic development pattern of human disease would shift from infections to chronic and degenerative diseases, so that infectious disease would progressively diminish as societies became more affluent. 2 decades later, with the emergence of more than 30 new or resurgent infectious diseases, a new doctrine may be more appropriate. Every change in demography, vegetation, land use, technology, economics, and social relations is also a potential change in the ecology of pathogens and their reservoirs and vectors, and therefore a change in the pattern of infectious disease epidemiology. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions? Yes, Albert, please. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much for focusing on a very, very important area, a neglected area of neglected disease. I come from the northeastern region of India, and in the foothills areas particularly, Plasmodium falciparum is quite a major killer. But because of this attitude towards this, there are hardly any laboratories which can detect whether a person having high fever, whether is having P. falciparum or something else. And you have to nearest place is Kolkata, where thanks to this tropical medicine, developments, we have good laboratories. And so many people die. We have lost many good people also, like even field workers who go to these areas. And surprisingly, even public demand an outcry for better medical facilities. Demands a cancer institute or things like that. But nobody really focuses on this. So it's nice to see also ICMR pitching in, but then I don't know how things will improve. But I think this, at least we experience this great problem in our area. So thank you very much.
Yeah, WHO convened consultations on genomics and health. And one very interesting comment was made, sort of as on the side, by one of the participants, mentioned that 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 for a long time they've been trying to come up with a vaccine, a malaria vaccine, without much success, But one of the participants, I think it was from Solaris, and that's the company that Craig Venter, formed, mentioned that. At about that time, there was a promising candidate vaccine for malaria, but we had this characteristic that there was only efficacious for a few months, and you had to get. And then after that, I thought about it. Actually, this is the ideal vaccine, for commercial, for commercial pharmaceutical company, because it's something that if you develop it, you can have a market among potential tourists, tourists in affluent countries, who visit, and every few months, the effect goes up, so they keep going back, I've always wondered, about 10 or 15 years ago, the Colombian biochemist, Manuel Patorero, announced a very promising candidate vaccine, and even at that time, he had declared that if something really came out of it, he would donate the property rights, the IPR to WHO. But I've never been able to find out. There were some field trials done in Africa, I think in Thailand, but I haven't heard much about it ever since. Can you share anything about it?
No. In fact, it would be ideal, as you say, because now when we go to these foothill areas, we carry all kinds of mosquito repellents. I mean, those repel the human beings also, all kinds of, these coils and whatnot. It's much better to have a drug which even acts, vaccine, that acts for 3 months, fine, and again I can have it if I go. But it has never come into the market, not to my knowledge.
Okay, we have a lot of hands up, but I'm afraid we have to move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. That's for you, yes. This is yours? Yeah, that's yours. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we got 2 more papers, and then some closing remarks, and I'm going to take a survivor's photo, and then you'll be free. So the next paper is from the Amul Nazef and Umar Jemi, and it's presented by the Secretary of the National Bioethics Committee of Indonesia. And it's going to compare the National Bioethics Commission of Indonesia in the framework of national scientific research and technological progress. Thank you.
Thank you. First, of course, thank you to UNESCO and especially Dr. Mesa for the invitation. Only 10 minutes, so I will not be discussing the National Bioethics Commission in Indonesia in full, and I have to liberty restricting 1 or 2 statements why bioethics is relevant to Indonesia. Only first to say a few words about this commission. This is today, or yesterday was the first anniversary of that commission. So we have yet to to produce something worth for the government, of course, for this very short life of 1 year. To start with, we have, let me report here that we have only 2 plenary sessions so far. The first was on matters that are not relevant to the bioethics itself, but the procedure, how to identify, etc. And it's only early this year that we noticed that we have to have a strong secretary for this. The secretary will start from collecting information from the mass media, paper clippings, etc. Organize this into a structure that can easily be analyzed further, and also only then information paper, background papers be prepared, because these members are high-ranking officials, not truly professional, but dedicated solely for this commission. So unless you do this for them, you will not get far. So allow me to come back to the identifying why it's relevant to Indonesia to have this. By having these 3 statements. Bioethical norms, meaning the one in the draft declaration, of course, cover both human and non-human aspects. But it is not well reflected there. In fact, the mandate from the General Conference of UNESCO 2 years ago was to develop a declaration on the universal norms on bioethics. And I believe IBC soon enough found that this very concept of universal norms would bring them to difficulties. Some will automatically react. There is no such thing as universal norms. Probably there is a universally accepted norms. So in the end, what we have now, this is now adopted by the intergovernmental meeting last June, ready for tabling next month at the General Conference, is now titled Universal Declaration on Bioethics with added and Human Rights. So this commission in Indonesia grew parallel with the development from outline number 3, number 4, number 5 of that particular draft in Paris, because we had to prepare inputs to that. So using only those principal norms as can be found in the 3rd outline, 4th outline, we will be in difficulty in justifying the second statement here. There's more living more. Living organism is an interconnected global system. Difficult to justify that this is one of the principles to be incorporated in the declaration. It's not there. It was only in January 2005, after the intergovernmental meeting, went through para per para of this, the draft, that we introduced what now we have as in fact in June was the decision made to have as a last principle. There are 15 principles, and human dignity and human rights is the first, numbered as an article number 3, because the first 2 articles dealing with scope and aims. So first principle is, of course, human dignity and human rights, although it's called Article 3. And then the last of the 15 principles is, you can read this in the abstract collection there, protection of the environment and the biosphere, protection of the environment, the biosphere, and biodiversity. In last June, we saw the entrance of the concepts from CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity, because we have their utilization of biological and genetic resources explicitly mentioned. It took a while, it took 1 year to make this happen, to the respect for traditional knowledge and to the role of human beings in the protection of the environment, the biosphere, and the biodiversity. So, biological diversity, we want to have this analyzed using the 15 principles. It goes through as a bioethically sound to have. That particular session I mentioned with our commission went through these stages. One, biological diversity represented by the substance itself, the biomaterials itself, but also including in that particular structure or materials, information. This is the source of further development, something that will feed one's imagination with ideas to create. Chemical structure, this is called bioactive, in its journey into viable drug discovery process, etc. If I continue these 3 small dots, we will go into the WIPO regime, intellectual property of traditional knowledge, etc., genetic resources. But then this is ethical analysis that we are performing. So just cut short the real arguments of those meeting and working group meeting by quoting at the end. We have this statement to show you. If that particular word "foreign" is not necessary here. If a researcher working in Indonesia, of course, it will not be proper for him or her to bring out his research result for the sole interest of his or her acquisition of knowledge or scientific knowledge. This reflects on how you interpret that particular Article 3B that was discussed earlier by our colleague from Vietnam. Article 3B being the interests and welfare of the individual should have priority over the sole interest of science. Science and society. So that is the key conclusion that you can draw if you do the analysis. meaning if you want to, all the 15 principles apply to the concept of biodiversity, will somehow reach this conclusion. And probably the thing that we were surprised April 2004 when we saw that Article 3B in Paris during the IBC special session to introduce I believe it was the third outline or the fourth outline, was that particular 3B. So that particular 3B was already there since the first draft. What we, as a non-English speaker, could not understand well was the word soul, of course. They feel relaxed, they feel no guilt because of that very word soul. So of course it's all right to have the interest and welfare, the priority, the interest and welfare prevail, something. 3B, this text. The interests and welfare of the individual should have priority over the sole interest of science or society. We made an input, because reacting to this, to drop the word society. It was not accepted. The response was that there was this small word, soul. So, of course, it's correct. It's just that we don't quite feel right because of the somewhat language barrier, I believe. It took us a while to, all right, we accept this, and then we came up, why do you now have to be satisfied with if it's a sole interest of your quest for scientific knowledge? So in a way that this reflects the balance that in the end, this is the last frame. In the end, we feel somewhat making an accomplishment to be able to say, now we believe that respect for human dignity and protection of human rights, fundamental rights, being guaranteed through the application of these 15 principles to living system, biosphere and biodiversity. And it is only from here that we can move forward. This is our experience in Indonesia. Move forward to go through the process of further establishing the working groups on genetic resources and working group on stem cell. It's only after we have gone through this discussion that we can reach this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or reflections? And yes, Leo, please.
For the foreign researcher to do to come out to the results solely for the purpose of gaining knowledge, what else should there be?
I know this is also simplifying things, but that particular was taken from analyzing other article that was the transnational practices. Transnational practices in the end was formulated that any research should have the clearance of ethics committee, both where it is conducted and where it originated, or the funder country So that was one. And the second is the other, applying the other principles in terms of meaning applying, for example, equality, justice, and equity. So basically, you borrow from CBD, informed consent and benefit sharing, because within these 15 principles that finally being adopted now is that we have also this benefit and harm as Article 4. So not pure advance in science and knowledge, but also equity, distribution of benefit, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. In fact, I think some of the text was suggested by United Nations University and others that why not use the common text already agreed upon, though in fact the United States didn't sign the Convention on Biological Diversity, but this is a declaration, so it's not so legally binding for them. Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Our topic is very simple something, but I want to take it in this conference because we need an awareness about the current state of ethical aspects in a developing country, overpopulated country like Bangladesh. That's the title. That's me. Objective of our article, as I told before, is current situation on ethical issues in biomedical research in developing countries, especially like Bangladesh. And also, other objective is to focus on the ways and means to ensure the implementation of bioethical aspects. As you know, 2/3 of the world population lives in developing countries, and so is the disease burden and requirement for biomedical research. But there's a disparity between the burden of disease as well as proportion of medical research that is being done in developing countries. On top of that, study with human subjects and ethics remains a paradoxical burden on the researcher, still reducing the number of research. So it needs to be sorted out, because though bioethics has attained a strong foothold in health sciences of the developed world, situation is quite dissimilar in many developing countries. In a country like Bangladesh, researchers still lack proper knowledge about ethical components of research and attitude towards its practice. One of my colleagues in the earlier session has presented on paper where it was shown that particularly medical practitioners do not possess sufficient knowledge about the ethical components of research. As we know, according to the Helsinki Declaration, human subjects should come always before the interest of science and society. Still, it is common practice in developing countries to carry on biomedical studies like clinical trials without taking informed consent from human subjects. It becomes possible because study subjects are easily exploitable due to their, illiteracy, poverty, unemployment, consciousness lacking, even willingness to volunteer is sometimes influenced by some advantageous benefits. Now I come to a point of ethical body that is important. Many researchers in developing countries don't even care for clearance from the ethical clearance body prior to starting research. And I must mention here that, like other official bureaucratic problems, this clearance is also a problem in developing countries. Researcher needs to go once, twice, thrice, even they need to wait for months getting clearance due to some bureaucratic and corruptional problem. Journals, medical journals especially, in developing countries, sometimes publish articles without taking care about the ethical aspects of the study. So there's a need for sustainable research ethics committees to provide ethical review of human subject research in developing countries. And need for education on ethical issues in the training institute and medical professionals. So, another point I must mention that this could be a checkpoint, this ethical review committee, as well as the editors, journals, a better care of the ethical issues. It will improve the situation. And I don't want to linger more. Ultimately, this achievement requires professional, technical assistance and political motivation, both from national and international level. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any comments or questions? You kept well within your time. Okay.
I must mention one thing, that I was a substitute of one of my colleagues who was absent in this meeting. So you can ask questions, no problem. One of my colleagues is there to answer your queries about this topic or Bangladesh, whatever it is. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. There's one question. Okay, Charmaine, please. Hold on.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Actually, I could understand well, I think, because in China, 4 years ago, just as a situation like this you mentioned just now. So we have to pay a great effort to change this situation from the very beginning. It's quite difficult. But now, sometimes we say, oh, the spring of bioethics coming. So I thought the situation changed a lot. We need to work on this. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. That's the target, and that's why we're here, to improve the situation. Any more questions, please?
Okay, please.
Thank you. I'm from Indonesia, and I am almost sure that in Indonesia, although Indonesia is known as a corrupt country, that there is no such thing, bribery and corruption, in the clearance of research proposals. I'm sure about that. Although, I have to admit that anywhere else, corruption is rampant. But not, I'm sure, not in the process of clearance, proposals, etc. Because this is a select committee and it's transparent, etc. And I know them personally, most of them. So what about in Malaysia?
Thank you. It may be the situation of your country. May I ask you one question? What about the other points, like do you get the clearance quickly, or are they interested enough to help you as soon as possible? Do they try to give you the clearance and things like that?
According to the procedure. Nothing more, nothing less. But attaching this to bribery and corruption, I'm sure it doesn't happen in Indonesia.
Then I must mention one thing, that some NGOs and other organizations in our country, when they go for clearing, the people over the clearance committee, I shouldn't say the people, the junior staffs, and I must mention like the office bearers and things like that. They think that this project is having a big fund from outside donors, so we must try to fill our pocket as well. So as long as they can, we try to hold the file over there. This is the situation, reality. May not be true for Indonesia, but for our country. It should be improved. This is our request over here to improve the awareness. Thank you, Mr. Lai. Took a lot of time, maybe.
Thank you. So we still have energy for discussion. That's very pleased. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I want to give a few closing remarks. Thank you for your active participation in the last 5 days, and we still have a reasonable number of people actively engaged in surviving, though we have some newcomers who are fresh, and some of the others have passed by. We had about 140 people attending this conference, though not all at one time. Now, one of the major functions of this meeting is to develop a networking, and we intend to follow up with some emails and a network. We may create a listserv in order to better exchange views on these discussions and the future implementation of bioethics programs in this region. We also have suggestions to work with regional associations, which were suggestions from meetings in 2003 and earlier in this year. Associations like the Asian Bioethics Association and others that are working in the regional level, and national bioethics associations and national bioethics committees, and these are part of a mandate of UNESCO to work with member countries. So we hope that when you go back to your countries, you'll be able to actively engage in discussions with colleagues and these committees and the national commissions that work with UNESCO, which are usually in the Ministry of Education, but sometimes in other ministries, depending on the country. And we plan to have a series of sub-regional and national meetings to try and map out programs and develop specific responses. In order to fund some of these targets, I plan to put together some large grant applications for sub-regional or regional activities in bioethics, and I hope that in a network we can develop these. We also welcome people from outside the Asia-Pacific region, and we had a number of people who are interested in Asian and Pacific bioethics attend this meeting. And I think we have always had an open policy. UNESCO is a global organization. Currently, all member countries of the world, except for Singapore, are official members, and Singapore has become an observer member the next 2 years and is expected to join back. So in a couple of years' time, it will be up to everyone again. We are welcome to receive plans and projects for cooperation. We're also willing to work together if it will help your own activities. And the idea of a network is that obviously no one organization can work to accomplish all that we dream to accomplish and all that we should ethically accomplish. But we hope to work with many willing partners to do this. And I think we've identified some local priorities, and we'll make a report and send a draft report to all participants. Also, we'll be looking for full papers from everyone. Some have sent their papers. Some sent their papers 2 months ago. If you want to revise anything, please send it by the end of September. Okay. And as I said, I would like to circulate a DVD with the PowerPoint presentations and together with the edited book, and we'll decide, at least we'll have probably one complete edited book with all the papers on the DVD. We have not yet decided on the sheer size of putting all the papers together. Maybe if it's less than 2,000 pages, it might be a task, but we will see on this. So we need to make such decisions, but at least we'll put together the proceedings in electronic form. For those who came along to the Bioethics textbook meeting, in the course of this meeting, the current thinking of our project team is that the new title will be Cultural Dialogues on Bioethics, rather than Bioethics for Informed Citizens Across Cultures, and this reflects feedback from a number of persons, not only at this meeting. But if you have any suggestions, again, please send them. I wanted to thank especially several people who worked very hard for this meeting, and Siriwan, who you've met, is actually, we've just missed her, she's gone back to UNESCO, I think to do some more work before we have another meeting next week on HIV and human trafficking and social cultural research. But Philip is still here, so Philip, please stand up, and thank you very much. I think so you've corresponded electronically with Philip, and now you've met him in the flesh, and we will continue the dialogue. I'd like the other staff and volunteers to also stand up, please. Thank you very much. So we've worked very hard, and so far no one has gone to hospital, though almost, and we hope that's the same situation in the next few days as well. Now I would like to also just mention that we will be, about 20 of you so far have indicated that you are able to come to a meeting tomorrow from 9 until lunchtime at UNESCO Bangkok, and I've given out maps of how to get here, how to get there, I should say, since we're here. How to get to UNESCO Bangkok. It's only one SkyTrain station or a taxi ride. It would probably cost about 50 baht. So I would suggest, as I've written here, that if you left about 8:45, it would be a reasonable time to leave here. And since a number of you are leaving, either you might want to decide to leave together. Then we'll have lunch from 12 to 1, and then after that, we've also been mentioned some people are leaving to the airport, and I think we can discuss, you should discuss perhaps together the times that if you wish to share a taxi, as some people have done today. And there's also a few people off tonight, so have a safe trip. And I also wanted to, I think the last thing I wanted to remember is from 6:30 to 7:30 tonight, in the Tower Hotel reception, there's a free cocktail and some snacks. So for everyone staying in a hotel, not only our conference, but it might be a chance to talk to people if you wish. And I think the last thing, I just wanted to take a survivor's photograph informally. So maybe we will line up across here and just take a photo informally as survivors, and so we can remember. So thank you very much for coming, and I look forward to seeing you again.
You introduced the
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Then one more. Just use the digital camera. You can use this one. Okay. Because we can send by. Not just be your guide. Okay. 1, 2, 3, cheese. One more. 1, 2, 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3.